My name is Amanda Takes for Bonnet, and I am here with several people. This is our bi-weekly show, the Buffalo Bill Wild West show, bringing the stories back to the people. We were off air for a little while, but we kind of got straightened out now, and we're going to be back on air again. We have several guests here. This is a project out of Oglala Lakota College, their library, and it is from a grant that the summary, or just to kind of put it together, is that Cody was a big part of our Lakota history with a lot of our ancestors when they joined his show. And so much of that is we don't have a good deal of Lakota perspective in there. So this grant is to help bring the stories back to the people. It's giving our Lakota perspective of the show, the photographs, the stories, the objects, and just informing people of information, and to try to get community members that have stories and photographs to participate in here so that we can actually etch our Lakota stories, perspectives into the collection that has been formed, and which is a huge collection. And most of it stems out of Cody, Wyoming, at the Cody Museum there. And so we have a number of guests today. I'm here with Cecelia Fire Thunder, and we sit on an advisory committee for the college on Stella Ironclad, and Archivist Valerie Janis. Thank you, Valerie, for putting this together for us. And today we have we're going to start out with a special guest, Delaney Apple. Delaney has a passion for photographs, or looking into our history, what we're talking about, not just Cody, but he does a lot of his own hobby into old photographs of our ancestors. And he's pretty good at doing his little research and presenting it mostly on social media and songs, photographs. And so he really enlightens a lot of people through his social media. So we asked him to come on board with us this morning and talk a little bit about that. Then we have Stella Ironclad also, who will be talking. And I'm just going to, after Delaney, I'm just going to review what the project is about and some things about the Cody collection. And Cecelia, do you have anything you want to say?
Hi, good morning. Cecelia, me controller here again. Nakop the Nagaki, Wapila Kanka Hecha. Let the Akuki a honey way to Iwak. So, anyway, what I wanted to convey to the listeners is that Delaney, who's going to be coming on, found all these wonderful information about his grandmother and his grandparents. And so we just felt he needed to come on. One more thing, Amanda talks about the collection. A lot of the stories that are told about the Wild West and how our people went overseas and were written by non-Indians. And so what we wanted to do was to make sure that our people, your relatives and my relatives, those who went over there, to hear their side of what happened. And then, so you have all these photographs and stuff. And then, so hopefully we can get more stories from for example, if your grandparents were there. And so we're encouraging everybody to let us know if any member of your family in the past went on the Wild West show, we want to include your stories. And if possible, if you have any photographs or share whatever you can about your ancestor or your relative that went overseas. So this is what it's all about. We want to add to their story the Lakota perspective. And as Amanda stated earlier, one of our programs, most of the people who went to Europe with Wild West were from Oglala, mostly from Pine Ridge. And then the other part, the part that I really enjoyed was that sometimes they had to portray a Pawnee or a Kiowa. So anyway, so in those scenes that they created. So please respond to us as we continue asking you family members for any information of anybody in your family that was on the Wild West show. Well,
So we'll go ahead and let Delaney, are you ready?
Yeah, good morning. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Hini washte Delaney Apple and Machabna. Manderson hecha Homoxila Macham. Wale holecha many losing how teacher. I appreciate you guys inviting me. I'm glad that you guys thought of me, and thanks for the compliments and the encouragement also to because researching is it takes hours and hours and hours, and on my layoff times I stay up sometimes like 4 in the morning, because once you get started it takes you on a journey, just searching and searching, and you like get addicted and you can't stop. Maybe the next picture that you scroll to is going to be one of your relatives, so you just keep searching and searching. So I appreciate the encouragement and the support, Auntie Amanda, Auntie Cecelia. So I guess I just, for me, I guess it started, I was raised by grandma and grandpa. And I know my grandma's name was King, and I know my grandpa's name was Apple. So it's kind of like a start there. And when I was a kid, my grandma took me to the Sioux Museum here in Rapid City, and she wanted me to see a picture of her dad, Jefferson King, and her mom, Stella Fast Thunder King. They had some big pictures up down there, and so we went down there to look. I was maybe 10, 12. And then at home, my grandmother always had like tons of pictures, but being a kid, you just play and you don't pay attention. And my grandma had those old school trunks, maybe like 3 of them, huge trunks just full of memorabilia, pictures. I think in hindsight, I think I'm very fortunate that my grandmother cherished her history and cherished her family and kept all of those pictures. And she made, even though they might have been on the reservation, maybe hard times, I don't know, she always made sure she had a camera, and she always made sure my grandpa had a reel to record. And she had stacks of reel to reels. We never got to listen to them when I was a kid, and I wasn't really interested either, though. There were a few times I'd go, and my grandmother would be opening her trunks, taking out all the pictures, and talking to my older sisters and my relatives, explaining who was who. And I never paid attention. I was just I don't know, not interested, and I was young. And I guess I'm 51 now, and I guess my interest in my genealogy and family history beyond my grandparents didn't start until maybe like 4 years ago, 5. And I come across this page on Facebook, Native North American tribes, and they had a whole ton of pictures, and they were separated by tribes. And then I click on one and I see my grandpa Fast Thunder and my grandpa Jefferson King and Grandma Stella. They're like really popular pictures. Other pages that I've seen over the years have used their pictures, and I'm commenting on hey, that's my grandma, that's my grandpa. And so I click and I just start going through and downloading or screenshotting all the pictures that I could find. And then all the just that's how it started for me, because through the Wild West shows, they were popular. They were in a place where the pictures are they're able to have their pictures taken, and those were shared, like you said, at probably Nebraska. There's probably still some that I haven't seen there. And so that's where it started. And I remember one of my uncles messaged me and asked me if I'd had a picture of somebody and I started looking and looking and I couldn't find it. And then I just remembered that my grandmother had all these pictures. What if I never looked through them? She passed away in 1995, and here it is like 2016, 17. I haven't looked at them. You know, I've kept them safe, and my mother kept a bunch, and my sister Roxanne kept a bunch, and so I just decided to go out to the shed, open them up, and look at them, and lo and behold, there's like all these family pictures, like you don't see on the internet. My grandpa Jefferson, grandma Stella, front of our house, at church, just tons of history that, you know. And I'd actually sat up one night and I made a prayer. I was Ziliad and I prayed. I was like, you know, help me to find these pictures. Help me to find who I am. Help me to find the stories, you know, that I'm looking for. I don't know what I'm looking for, but I'm just interested in my history now. So I made a prayer, and then when I opened that box up and I seen all these pictures in there, like my mom when she's a baby, just like all family relatives. I have one of Cecilia's sisters when she was a baby or a young girl. All my aunties who are in their 70s now, when they were little girls, just tons of pictures. So I started a Facebook page and started to download all the pictures and added my relatives and whoever could remember who a lot of these people were in these pictures, you know, they would comment. And so I started to find out, you know, who my grandma's cousins are. Um, so my grandma, I started to find out who my grandpa Jefferson's brothers were, and then their kids, and then who my grandpa, you know, it just led like that. And since I showed an interest and I became um public, or you know, my family found that I was interested, things just started to come. My mom had interviewed my grandmother and had her write down a family tree in just pencil. And so my grandma wrote down all her siblings, her parents, their siblings, their parents. And that once I had that paper in my hand, then I could go on the internet and start searching for those people. And then I also found ancestry.com, which was expensive for me, but it was well worth the year's subscription that I'd um, got, because I got military records, I got newspaper articles. So once I had the names of my ancestors and my grandparents, and then I could just, you know, the searching became, it became to where it's just too much. Then I had so much information that just like I could paint a picture, you know, of their lives and where they traveled to and where they were at. And um, so my genealogy and research and pictures, it just went beyond what I had imagined it would have gone to. And to have all so many pictures to go with the faces and the names, that was really fortunate. Um, and then through social media, I started to share these photos and my interest, and then I find relatives like in Martin, in Kyle, Cheyenne River. I started to meet relatives on social media, and maybe some aunties that I remember when I was a little baby, but I never really got to meet a whole lot of people as an adult. So through social media, I've connected with family members and found out some of the young men, some people that I'd grown up with were cousins. There was a friend that I had, and we would hang out, and I'd go to the house, and the his mother used to call me nephew, and you know, I just thought it was an Indian thing. You know, they just calling me nephew, you know. But then I later on I found the tree and how we're connected, and I found out that I'm direct blood related to my auntie. So a lot of those types of things came up for me. And then on my grandpa's side, Apple's side, I found out that his mother wasn't Oglala. So as I searched and went back each generation, I realized that the history that we learned, that we traveled together. The Kioksas traveled with the Oyukhpes at one time, and the Hunkpapas traveled with the Kioksas. All of those stories, we intermarried and we all traveled different. We weren't on reservations. A lot of the genealogy and the way that I researched and found out that it just made more sense, that we were part Itazipcho, part Minikoju, part Kioksan, and part Oyukhpe. And then, I mean, whenever you get into the Lakota, the Tioshpais, you even find out more, like, and that even paints a better picture, because then you can find, like, there's some site that I found. So I looked up Grass Creek area, and it was in the 1930, I think, those land plot allotment things. So you could see where Grandpa Jefferson's land is, and then you see all these relatives that have land around him. And then so in my mind, I'm thinking they must have all been together. They must have all camped together, been close together. Maybe my generation, maybe my mom's generation don't know those relationships, but they're there. And so personally, I became connected. I feel more connected to my community, and back home, and then I feel more connected to my community in Kyle, since my grandpa Paul met my grandma Stella and moved to Grass Creek. All I knew was Manderson and Grass Creek and then Rapid. But to hear, my grandpa Charlie Apple and Grandpa Virgil telling me stories about how they grew up in Kyle, so I'm more connected to Kyle as well too, because that's where my grandpa's from. So learning the genealogy, family history, it connects you to something greater than that my generation knows we belong to, and it makes you feel empowered. It makes you feel like more you have more self-confidence, whenever you go to the different communities, because we could be related. Any doings that we go to, we could have relatives there. Maybe we don't know it. Maybe if we study our genealogy, we'll find out that we do have relatives everywhere. So it builds self-confidence, and it builds, that knowledge base, but also it helps me because I have a lot of children, and so they're gonna know that they're connected as well. So anything that I learn, in turn, I share, because I want everybody to feel that good feeling. And so then I hear, my grandmother, when I was young, she told me stories about her mom and dad. They met during the Wild West shows. And I tried to trace them back. My grandma Stella Fast Thunder, she had brothers and sisters, and they were performers too. One was Mark Red Star, and I can't remember my great grandma Stella's sister's name, but they're related to means, and so you just, the family tree is just good. So I looked up Estella and our Stella Fast Thunder, and there's newspaper clippings. So she was a horseback rider, like a really well horseback rider. She could race horses. She do trick riding. So was her brother, and that's how they earned a living, is traveling with the Wild West show, and they were great horseback riders. So she met my grandpa Jefferson there, and I tried to research my grandpa Jefferson, but it's I haven't gotten very far. I just got his father was um Wichhóoyake just king, and I can't find him. I'm still gonna look, probably in the wintertime when I get laid off. I'll look a little bit harder, but so I found pictures of them, you know. And then so one of the things too really cool is through social media, I've met people like that American tribes. I'd make a comment on there too, and then pretty soon those guys that do all that research over in England, they friend me on Facebook, like Kingsley Bray, and um there's another guy, I can't remember the names right off the bat, but they're like they really did a lot of research on that American tribes, and I got them as friends on Facebook. And when things come across that, you know, like they know me already, my name, and they know who my family is, and when things come up um in their researches, then they'll send me stuff. There was a lady not just recently, like within the last year, she's a part of the London Museum or something like that, and she was collaborating with one of these researchers, and he said, "This is my friend Delaney's family," and connected us. And she sent me, I think it was like three pictures, 8 by 10 pictures, of my grandpa Jefferson, and he's with the whole group. So like just it opened up doors, you know, for me. And pictures keep coming, you know, family pictures, and a lot of them are from the um, Buffalo Bill Wild West show. So I'm really happy and really fortunate to have started down this path. And I encourage anybody out there, you know, just there's places on social media, but there's also like these Denver archives, Marquette. There's different places that are have archives that are they're digitizing their photos, and in my mind, I just keep thinking there's more photos, there's more photos, and I think these archives they're slowly starting to digitize things to where we can, and then they upload them to their web page so we can search them, you know, and find our family members, find pictures of them. And I know a lot of people have through social media, but not just Facebook. We can actually go to different archives websites and search. And I know there's a lot of like places that you, Amanda, have told me to go. I haven't gone yet. And also my auntie Dinah, she told me to go to the Mormons. Said the Mormons have one of the biggest collections of information. I haven't done that yet, so I'm kind of like an avid researcher, and you know I'm really happy and thankful for the blessings that have come so far, and I hope someday that you know I can do more. And I actually wanted to like I quit my construction job a couple of years ago, and I went back into community service work, and eventually I went back to construction, so I'm back in construction again. But during that time, I was thinking, how cool would it be for us in Rapid City to have a place that has ancestry.com, has all these archive links on computers, has a download and scanning capability, and somebody there that you know that can show them and guide people, guide our relatives around the internet and where to find their family and their family tree. And I wanted to do that, but I haven't. I've been back into construction again, and it's it's something though. It's a dream, and maybe you know someday, so maybe somebody listening to this program um, will take that idea and work with it. But there's so much history. Like I know stories that my grandma told me about her brother. We lost a relative over in Europe, actually, Titus. He got hurt trick riding. That was his performance, was trick riding, and he fell off a horse and got hurt, and ended up having to be buried overseas. So there's stories that grandma told us and that we know, because her family, you know, she heard them from her parents, and her brother, Matthew King. And so some of those were passed down, but I really wish that when I was younger, I would have paid attention more. And that's always how it goes, you know, and you get older, you wished you would have paid attention. You wished you would have sat still. You wished you would have asked this question, asked that question. But we didn't. So now I'm, you know, years later when the interest is here and I do have all these pictures, I don't know who they are because grandma's gone, grandpa's gone, some of the older aunties are gone, you know, but we still just keep trying to plug away, not to be all negative, but we still keep trying to plug away and find out. But anybody listening, you know, if you're young, you know, sit with grandma, sit with auntie, grandpa, uncle, ask questions about family trees, ask questions, just stories, you know, where did they grow up? What community did they grow up? Who are their friends in that community? So there's a lot of things that you can ask and write down, document, and keep records of them. So that way, in the future, you'll have like little cues in which way, you know, when you do get to go into researching, you'll have these little, you'll have names, you'll have dates, you'll have things where you can plug in and start searching for things. Because if you don't have any names, if you don't have any, you know, information, it's research is really hard. I know it's super hard because there's been people that have asked me to help them and they don't have any cues to go off of or anything, you know, to help them start researching, and it's almost impossible. You got to have some names at least. And so that would be my encouragement to all the listeners out there to, you know, do your research and ask questions. Sit down with uncle while he's still alive. Sit down with auntie, because a lot of our elders are passing away, and they're the ones that know, you know, the older days, and they're the ones that know, you know, how we lived just 50 years ago, you know, 70 years ago, even some of them. So we have to keep trying to keep our genealogy and our family histories relevant and keep them important. I know every day it's hard, it's a struggle, and a lot of us are just trying to survive and, you know, keep a roof over our head and food on the table. And, you know, genealogy is probably one of the last things that we probably think of or way down the line in the food chain. But at some point, it's going to become important, you know, and it's really going to be, especially with our future generations. And the more assimilated, the more, you know, further we walk away from our Lakota way of life, our grandchildren are going to want to know these things like I want to know today. You know, I want to know. And then archives also, like the OLC archives. I Googled my grandpa Paul Apple's name, and a hit came up at OLC archives, said he had a recording, audio recording. And so I went down there and I got to hear my grandpa Paul's voice. And so I got recordings of my grandpa Paul singing, my grandpa Matthew singing. I got audio, you know, recordings, and those are the things that I cherish because I remember how they sound. You know, they've been gone for a lot of years, but to hear their voice again, it like just it makes you feel warm. It makes you feel proud and good. And so I really appreciate our grandpas and grandmas for doing those audio recordings and preserving them for us to be able to hear those today. And so Amanda, Cecelia, I think that's if that's hechetulo isto.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for all that information. Cecelia and I come from the lineage of apples, so we were listening intently on that, what you were talking about with Apple, but we really appreciate you coming on, and maybe in the future you could come on again, Delaney.
Okay.
We will keep in contact with you, but that was good information. And like Delaney said, you know, and we've experienced that also, that sometimes with our younger generation, there is not a really big interest there. You can't get them interested. I seen that with my own family, is, you know, I'm so excited about a find and nobody else is really that excited about it. But the connection is, even with the Cody shows, is that, you know, there's a connection there. It tells how our ancestors lived, and a lot of that comes down intergenerationally, that we got their beliefs and we got their DNA, we got how some of the things they learned, and so those teachings went on into generations. So but Delaney talked about, you know, so many images out there that are unidentified, and in the biggest collection of the show, the expo show, is over in Cody, Wyoming, at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. And as you could tell, Cody, Wyoming was named for Cody because it started from that. And they own one of the biggest collections. And they have over 500,000 images.
Oh my God.
And objects. And so many of those images were unidentified because they were just taken and names weren't put on them. Excuse me. It was a show, so people's pictures were taken. You know, a lot of photographers flock to these shows to get a little piece of that imagery of history, of American history, by taking pictures of the Native Americans that were in the show, and then they didn't put names on them, and then they got collected. And so that's what we're trying to do. Not only is encourage people in the community to share their stories and their images, but also to take those images that are already there and try to identify them or talk about them and bring stories about them, of what they are. Not just who they are, but there's so many things in those photographs that are like photo forensics that you could discover about the dress, the environment, different things like that. So I just wanted to mention that that's quite a bit of, and we're getting access to that. We have access to that, and it is public access. If you go to their website, they have a lot of information on there. And in the future, I'll be talking about Cody and who he was and how this all came about. But one thing, I did see a presentation some time ago, and it was on the what it was about was his dramatization of history. So a lot of the influence we got in our past and into this today came from his stage, his arena, where he built up things that weren't really true. Like to say the Pony Express, he had that within his show. That's just an example, but really the Pony Express only lasted like a year. So, or the cowboy and Indian fights. Was there a whole lot of cowboy and Indian fights? No, he staged that. So a lot of that influence came from his show of how we are looked at today. And movie makers took on those images because he was all over the place. I think over 1,000 shows he did in America and across the seas. And there was like, altogether, there was 117 different expo shows, and Cody's was the most popular one. But there was other shows that followed him and did the same thing on a smaller scale, but his was the more popular one. And his show, he really took his Native American actors from Pine Ridge.
จะว่าพี่รักขังกะดีเลยนี่อยากจะพี่แต่ตอนนั้นแล้วเฮียนะนักแต่นักการที่นี่นี่ดูปีกีปาติเปนี่ดูกีปาติเป Okay. So wanted to just say thank you to Delaney again and remind the listeners what he shared with us was a journey to find out more about where he came from, his parents and grandparents. And so in Lakota we say, ni tuwe. Chamaya Wichhóoyake kiī aglí itoa pili la ota yuhawankina hena und isampati. So just remember, photographs are really important pieces that you can use to determine who you are. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll switch over to Stella now.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I had I thought that I would give you a little blurb about one of the pictures that I found. About, I don't always get online because I'm always busy doing something else, and so I'm not a really big social media person. But, and if I do, I sometimes need help. But when I was doing genealogy, 40 years ago or so, I always went to the Mormon library. And my favorite Mormon library was Rapid City. And they're called family history centers or family history libraries. And since COVID and since everybody has computers at home, they've changed a lot. But we used to go there and then order a film. And the film would come from Salt Lake City. And so my favorite film was 1014650. And you can look up this one on Family Search, I think, and type in the number. But that film is called The Revision of Names. And that's the revision of names done in 1906 for Pine Ridge. Every tribe, as far as I know, had a revision of names. There was one for Santee that I did when I was working on the Red Wings. But the revision of names starts with, what is the name? All right, Amanda Bonnet, what is the name that you are going to use from now until the day you die? And so you would say, Amanda takes Bonnet. And then the next column is, what was your Lakota name? Or what did they call you, in Lakota? And then that might be filled in depending on who the census taker was. But this is all done by the government. Then the next column is, what is the name that you came in and got your allotment? All right. And maybe that name is Amanda Apple. Okay, so now when you are looking for, you go back now and you're looking for your great grandma Cecelia Apple or something. You have to know that she is also going by takes Bonnet. So that's why the revision of names, this revision of names is very important, because if you don't know both of those names, sometimes you're going to have a very hard time finding these people. And another example of trying to find somebody in the cemeteries, we don't always find people. All right, take my great grandpa Blackhorn, who was in the Wild West show with his wife. He was a military scout, and so his scouting name on the military records is Killed Alive. So when you go to the cemetery and look for his tombstone, you have to know that he was also known as Killed Alive. So on his tombstone, it says Hisapa, and then it says Killed Alive. And then it tells the year of his service when he was a scout. So you have to know these things. It's important. I mean, I could be all day at an Estimable Gift Cemetery looking for him under Grandpa Blackhorn or Grandpa Badwound, and I would never ever find him because he's not listed that way on the military records. And then when you get to the going back to the revision of names, the next column would tell maybe their first name is Daniel, but the last column on remarks is they would put in, he is the son of young Bad Wound and Good Woman. He is the brother of Robert Bad Wound. He is, and Nellie Longskunk, Mrs. Nellie Longskunk, and Noah Bad Wound. So right there, you have a lot of information right there. And especially if you're looking for a woman, those women are so hard to find. And you think it's easy, but if you don't know, where to look, per se, or she might have been called, like my grandma Stella, who so when she's going on the ship overseas, it's Maddie. It's not Stella. But the to get government, anything from the government or recognized from the government, you had to have a Christian name and you had to be baptized. So most of these people then took Christian first names. And so they may have never ever used them, but her Christian first name was Stella. So on her tombstone, it's under Stella, it's not under Maddie. And there's just a lot of little things like that help you in your search. And that's probably, do we still have time or not?
Yes,
Hello?
they said we could go overtime.
Oh, okay. So let's go back to Maddie or Stella Bad Wound or Blackhorn. I get on social media, I get on the computer every once in a while and I'll just type in all these names and see what comes up, because people have things and they don't know what they have. And so I was looking through a site, a couple of years ago, and there she was. She was standing right there. She was in the Wild West show. She was 8 years old. She was in 1908. And she's standing there. And because she's a child, and Buffalo Bill, like all the children, gathered around him, either sitting or standing. So I recognized my great grandma, her mother. And so this little girl is standing right in front of her. And that's the first time I'd ever seen her picture. Well, I tried to get onto the website to see if I could buy a picture, buy a copy, or something, and they never ever responded to me. And so anyway, but I wanted this picture, and so I called Tawa, and who was the archivist at that time at OLC, and I said, you have a better address than I do, olc.edu, and would you try to see if you could get a copy of this picture, because I don't have one, and I really would like to have a copy of this photo. So she said, okay. Now that was after Christmas a couple of years ago. Mother's Day comes along and she says, can I bring your Mother's Day present over? And I said, sure. And we all like presents. And so anyway, so she brought this, she had it all wrapped up in a sack. And she took it out, and it was a panoramic photo of the Wild West show. Now, the part that they had put online was just the middle part with all these kids around Buffalo Bill. But when she got a hold of them and they didn't want to give her a copy of this photo, and she said, well, I've got an 80-year-old grandma in Porcupine who's going to be crying because this is the only photo that she's ever found of her grandmother. And so anyway, I don't know how she got it. I never did go into detail over that, but they did send her a panoramic copy of this this photo. So the part that's online is only a third of the picture, and then it extends to the right, and it extends to the left, and it's the whole Wild West show in 1908. I'm not too sure where it's taken. The man lives in Texas that had a copy of the photo. And he doesn't know anything about it. He just decided to, I guess, split it into 3 and put the middle part online. But anyway, so some of the things that we have to do to get these photos and get information on our families. One of the stories that I have that happened to me was I went to visit a friend who, a cousin, he's a cousin in Hill City, and he had a lot of photos from my grandmother Valandry's side. And he didn't want me to take copies, and he wouldn't let me take the photos down to the copy shop and make copies of them because he didn't want to let them out of his sight. And I don't blame him, because he doesn't know who I am. But in order for him to say yes, I said, all right, if I leave my mother hostage here, will you let me take the pictures down to the photocopy shop? And then I have to come back and get her. And so he finally agreed. And you have to do, little things or come back another day. And, and then sometimes these people don't want to share anything with you, and they've got it, but they don't want to share it. And those are the people that, maybe will pass on, and they haven't passed anything on to anybody else because they wouldn't share what they had in the first place. And I'm more than willing to share anything that I have, because if you're interested in genealogy, great. If you're related to me somehow, great. Let's share information. And I just can't believe these people that don't want to share anything. But anyway, so I rambled on long enough, and I want to thank you for letting me ramble on here.
Stella, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Stella, me and Amanda were sitting here listening, and perhaps one of the projects that we put together with your help and guidance would be a step-by-step process to look for family members in pictures. I don't think we ever had anything for people at home to use. Where do I start? Where do I start, and where do I go? What do you think?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and it's really hard if you know of somebody, because somebody will say, "Oh, you should talk to so and so because I know they do genealogy," or they're interested in family history. Now, I happen to have learned genealogy through the Mormon Church. I'm not Mormon, but I've utilized their facilities for years. And they're very, very helpful. They're just helpful with anybody who wants to do genealogy. You want to do genealogy, we're more than helpful. We'll help you all we can. So I do genealogy like they do. Other people, will put the whole, I've seen genealogies on paper sacks, cut apart and just trailed out there, and then all rolled up. So, but that's how they do their genealogy. So, there's,
Stella,
but
what
if
I'm
you
asking
find
you-
somebody, if you find somebody like maybe Cecelia does genealogy, well, maybe I'll give you a call and see if, we're related or something.
You know what, Candy, what I was talking about for the listening audience, I'm sure a lot of them are curious. Is there any way we can put together Lakota genealogy 101s and put some of the stuff in there with email stuff? I mean, I think people want to, they just don't know where to start. So that's why I'm asking if perhaps we can put something together. What do you think?
Okay, sure. Yes, I know. And everybody, learns differently and does things differently than we do. But yes, I'm more than willing to help anybody who wants to do their genealogy. I'm still doing genealogy. I get these calls all the time. I got a call from North Platte, Nebraska last couple weeks ago. And I told the lady, I said, Sundance is going on right now. Can I call you afterwards? And she said, yeah, no problem. But see, her grandmother is from over here, and her great grandfather that she's looking for is from Rosebud.
So
And
anyway, Candy, as I was listening to you, the other place that you can find information are the church archives.
right,
Christian churches have been on reservation since when? 1900. So we have Episcopal Church, Catholic Church, and a variety of other denominations have archives. They have, that's another place to look if you need to. So I guess what I'm asking you, Candy, is just provide people with some sources that they themselves can start looking on their own. And you know what, Candy? Along the way, this is what your interest was. And so along the way, something else popped up. So as you were doing the research for this, you were able to find another source and another source and another source, correct?
right.
So
Yes.
that's why I just, even maybe for the listening audience, and Delaney's story is something that I think everybody needed to hear. Today, in Lakota, so there seems to be a real strong sense of, what's the word I want to use? Belonging. And that there was a time when people were here before me. And
Right.
then, and I need to know who those people are, because if you're really, let me just frame it really in a cute way. I'm awesome because I come from awesome people. What do you think of that? Yeah.
Mhm. I like it.
I'm smart because I come from smart people. We have to then remember genealogy is about DNA. DNA
Right.
is memory of who we come from. And so sometimes you have an aha moment and you say, where did that come from? And that's one of your own cheese whispering in your ear. So it's important as we move forward, especially for the children and grandchildren who are coming up, because it's really important for them to know who they are. Look at a picture on the wall and say, that's my grandmother from, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago. I just think this work is really exciting, and Candy, it makes you feel good to know who you are, right?
It does. It really does. You have roots. I don't know how to, I don't know how to explain it, but the more you find, the happier you are. If we have a couple more minutes, I want to tell you a story about a pipe. When Grandma and Grandpa Blackhorn were in England, and I'm not too sure, they were there several times, but in the early 1900s, for some reason, I think they were in England for about 6 months, and they stayed with a man named Turvey. Now you probably can find him online. But years and years ago, about 40 years ago, I ran across this article about a beaded shirt that I had been looking for forever and a day. And I knew it was in a museum somewhere. But anyway, this doctor from Oxford, England, Pitt River Museum, was looking for descendants of Grandma and Grandpa Blackhorn. And so I wrote back to her, and she said, we have a large collection that this lady had donated after her husband had died, Mr. Turvey. Mr. Turvey had all these things that they had left with him or gifted him. And so she didn't know what to do with it. And she didn't know that much about the stuff, but she was donating it to the Pitt River Museum. And so anyway, so I asked this doctor at the time, because I wasn't that big into social media, and I said, is there any way that you can send me photos of the stuff that they did leave with you? Because when you get to the European museums, they don't have to repatriate anything. And also because I had been a caretaker all my life of a beaded hymnal, it's a lot of work and worry. You have to really, really always carry it around with you, or, what if you're in a car wreck and it's going to be, what are you going to do with this stuff? So anyway, so she sent me photos, and one of the things that she sent me was a pipe head that they had, Grandpa Blackhorn had gifted Mr. Turvey with. And so what she did was she put a ruler so that you could get the dimensions of the pipe. Well, our cousin Richard Ironcloud called me one day, and he said, because, if he wants information or anything like that, he always comes and asks or calls or something. And so we share what we have. And he said, I have a gift for you. And I said, fine. I said, just bring it by, Well, he brought this, and it was all wrapped in red. And I unwrapped it, and it was this pipe from it was a replica of the pipe that they left in England. And I just, I was crying, but I was just so happy, that I said, well, who made it? He said, I found a man in over by Heisel that makes pipes. And anyway, and what happened was when he was making this, he told Richard, he said, they don't make pipes like this anymore. He said, the circles and the bands coming out from the 3 points are made from the center on out. Evidently, pipe makers make them different now or something. But anyway, so he had the pipe stem made, and so now I didn't know what to do with it. And so what are you going to do with this pipe? Because I'm not a sundancer. But I gave it to my son, Cy, and that's the pipe that he now uses when he has it. And so it's just amazing the stuff that they left there. And while she was there, then Grandma Blackhorn taught Mr. Turvey how to make his own shirt and leggings and beadwork. And he did. So there used to be a picture of him online in his outfit that he made. And evidently they stayed with them for about 6 weeks or 6 months, something like that. It was a long time. And it might have been one of the times when the Wild West had all their horses taken away by the army. And another time when, I guess that happened a couple of times anyway. So they had, they were stranded more or less until they could get more animals or more buffalo or something. I'm not too sure what, but anyway. So yeah, so I mean, we find these stories just in the oddest places, and they'll just pop up sometimes, and it's so fascinating when it happens that way. But anyway, there I am rambling on again. I'm sorry.
So Candy, on a personal note, how did that make you feel to be able to hold a pipe that was a replica of one that belonged to your family?
Well, I just cried and cried and cried, I mean, I didn't cry all that much right then, but afterwards, it it was just such a blessing, you know, to me. And it was so special. I mean, so when I see him, my son dancing, and he, you know, and they come and offer their pipes, and I'll often see his pipe, and it just makes you cry again, you know. And because there's so much history involved in the whole process.
But those of you who are listening, I hope you heard Candy's story of an object that was connected her to her past, and the same object is moving forward to keep that feeling of being connected to the past, and not connect the past, but to our ancestors. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Okay, I just wanted to do some contact information here. If you do have stories, you have photographs, or you want to get in contact with us, you could call Valerie at the archives, or one of the ladies there at 455-606-6065. And this show, we have an agreement, OLC has an agreement with KILI Radio to run this show till the 21st. So we'll be on every other Thursday till the 21st. And
every Thursday.
Every Thursday?
Yep.
Oh, every Thursday. Did you know that? Well, we sure have a lot to talk about, because I'm sitting here with scads and notes and we didn't even get to it. There is a lot to talk about when you come to our ancestors and looking for genealogy, but I also want to tell people that the Cody Museum is online. They have a lot of stuff online, images, different publications, literature. Some years back, Cecelia and I were traveling and we stopped there at the museum. We were only able to stay there briefly, but oh my God, that was a fantastic experience for me. It was just so many things our ancestors made, and they preserved them. I don't think they had everything out, but 3 things that really made an impact on me was, one was a teepee. Actual teepee made with hides that they had so preserved, so good. Of course, you couldn't touch it and stuff, but you could see all the hides they put together. And it just made me think about how our ancestral grandmas really carried those things around, and how they took them on shows too, because then they had to set up a replica village where the arena when they were doing this, because you had Europeans and Americans that wanted to see a replica village, and they would pay to go walk by and see this village, and they'd be out there, you know, just living their life there and their teepees. People were paying to see them. And then the other thing was, it was a clapboard house, a small house, and it really reminded me of my grandma. You know, that's how it was, just a bed and a wash basin and little things like that was in that house. And that was how the transition period was for our ancestors when they stopped living in teepees and they went to wood houses. And then the other thing that really made an impact on me was a pair of moccasins, and it was done by one of the ancestral grandmas, made with quills. But you know, she took sinew and it looked like tiny beads on that moccasin, but it wasn't. It was quill work, and she just put the sinew down just right to make it look like tiny beads. And of course, that was preserved so well. But you know, just looking at those moccasins, I thought about our ancestral grandmas, and that was a big part of their life was, you know, moccasins. And that's a whole story to talk about moccasins and shoes we wear now and how that affects our feet. But I just wanted to bring up those couple of things. And there's so much more we can talk about, but I wanted to give you those. I could be contacted on Facebook, or Cecelia could be contacted on Facebook. Stella has a cell phone. I don't know if she wants to share it. I can also
share it.
Okay.
899-1411.
Did you hear that? 899-1411. And then I could be contacted at takeswar@gwtc.net. And Cecelia has the email. Cecelia 5 Thunder at GW2C.
I have a social media on my Facebook page. Message me.
Yeah, she can be messaged on her Facebook too. So those are ways to get us, because I know before when we had previous shows, then we were contacted by people that had their stories and they were really amazing to hear those stories. And part of our job is to start gathering those stories. And one event that the project has also is it's called a scanning event. And that's going to be planned sometime in the future for people to come and bring their images, and the college will scan them. And I think there'll be like food and maybe some gifts or something, but we're going to build up to that, but we're going to make it available. And Stella was telling her story about trying to get the photographs from the guy up in the hills, and with today's modern technology, you can really take images without having to do a lot of scanning. If you got a really good, and it's kind of costs, but if you have a really good smartphone, you could scan images with your smartphone nowadays, your photographs and stuff. You can even take your smartphone and scan your own negatives and process them right there into your smartphone, and then email them to yourself or whatever to get printed out, or you can have them right there on your phone. I've done that a number of times with people. They just have these old photo negatives, and we take it, put it up to the light, scan it, turn it into a black or white, or you could turn it into a color. I don't like that color because it just kind of randomly picks colors, but and you process it right there on your phone. And there's apps like that could be done, that you don't have to haul them off to the get them processed. Or you can take them and scan them and then put them into something and take it and get them printed. So modern technology really brings forth that stuff. Now, I don't know if there's anything else Cecelia wants to add.
Well, I just wanted to conclude by saying, Donale, Nakoptanaka ki Ognata Kuku Naya, Opinanis, and Tokiske Chanapi, Teki. Need to epic yapati up there. So it's really important for those of you who are listening to know who you are. When I was teaching at the college, it's a part of their grade, for whatever class I was teaching, they had to do a family tree. And the question is, Nitu. And it was really a fun part of the class, because so many of them were asking, and they were pulling out boxes of photos from the basement. And then one of my students said, my mom was so happy I finally asked her who my grandparents were, because again, like earlier in the discussion, it doesn't seem like they're interested in who they are. And many times they probably aren't at that moment, but it's important to like photographs. Like I had some photographs here. Amanda took her picture and her camera and took a picture of that photograph, So back to what Delaney was talking about is that Lila Woksape Tipi. So our circle of relatives is bigger than we can even imagine. And so in Lakota, we always say, when you have a lot of relatives, it provides you a real sense of safety, being connected and grounded. And so that sense of feeling grounded and being a part of something bigger has somewhat diminished, because there was a time, if those of you who are older are listening, everybody knew everybody who was related, and that makes you feel good. On this reservation, it could be in Rosebud, wherever, that circle of relatives gave you a really strong sense of belonging. And we need to create that sense of belonging to our children and grandchildren, because they're not alone, and we're not alone. So thank you so much, everybody, Candy especially.
Candy, would you like to add anything before we sign off?
No, thank you for letting me talk.
Yeah, that was
And
good.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing for everybody to find out who they are related to, because most of us are related to everybody. I used to tell my mother, just call everybody cousin, because you're related to everybody.
And I think it's important to know that if you had ancestors that were with the Expo show, because these were people, our ancestors, that was their first paid job. They traveled overseas. How many of us would jump a boat and travel for days and days to go overseas, And so they traveled overseas. They got seen other cultures. They more or less told our story out there, and that's what helped make us into the history books and help people pay attention to what was going on with us. And so and the imagery, there was so much imagery, and that's sadness that a lot of it wasn't identified. And you see that a lot when you go to that Cody archives online. So many photographs are not identified. You know, we have so many ancestors on there. And then he did pick a lot of Lakota people to be on his show.
Mhm.
So at first he started with the Pawnee, and then he went to the Lakota people, and he came and started getting them to go on the show, and a lot of them hopped on and jumped the boats and the railroads, and they went and they had experience and they came back. And there's no number of how many died on these shows, but there was quite a bit. We just don't have that, you know, those numbers. But also on that Cody archives, it tells in the manifest of his shows, it tells the Lakota people that went, the name of the people. So some of you probably have relatives on there, you know, that went to the show and the stories about him. Like my cousin talked about her grandfather, who he went, his name was Herman Conkinger, and he said that they traveled for days and days, and it wasn't just one ship. It was several ships they went on, because they had to carry the animals, and they had to carry, you know, people, yeah. And so they went for days, and they all had their rules of what they needed to do on these trips to survive and not die. You know, don't drink some of their liquids because you can kill you. You know, be careful what you eat when you go overseas, you know. So keep your own food and manage that yourself so you don't get killed. Or so it was great, lots of stories. And I think we pretty much went quite over our time, Melanie. So we want to thank Melanie for letting us go over a little bit. I think we're still on the air, and then we'll see you next Thursday again. And we just switch off between the talking about the expo and talking about genealogy. So it's been a great show. Thank you, Melanie.